Welcome back to MotionPic Recap. Today we're going to recap the science fiction, drama and adventure movie titled, Finch. Spoilers ahead. In the first scene of the movie, we meet a man called Finch, a robotic engineer, who is walking in what seems to be a sandstorm. He is seen wearing a suit that shields him from the harsh environment as he is rummaging for supplies with his robot companion called Dewey. His equipment suddenly beeps and indicates that the UV radiation level is high and the temperature over 150 degrees Fahrenheit before entering an old, abandoned store. We see Dewey picking up whatever food can be found. Finch is seen grabbing some dog food and expressing that someone will be glad. He marks the spot once he leaves so he knows what locations he has already scavenged. The following scene shows Finch passing through an abandoned town that has been destroyed as a result of the thinning ozone layer. People are unable to be outside due to the sun's radiation, and so a large portion of the city has been evacuated. Finch's outfit transmits a warning that a storm is suddenly closing in. The enormous storm is seen straight ahead, so he turns around and accelerates. Fortunately, he gets to his basement laboratory, which used to belong to the company he worked for before the disaster. Later, we learn that Finch is unwell and is rapidly losing his health. Goodyear, his canine companion, is waiting for him as he comes home. After giving the dog a hug and kiss, he prepares the food he earlier discovered. Finch only takes a sip of his drink as the supplies are running low, while Goodyear eats his food. Later, Finch is seen uploading basic instructions, like dog caring and household tasks, to an AI he created that later is named Jeff. We learn that Finch loves his dog more than anything, and thus is working on building a highly specialized robot to care for Goodyear, once he himself has passed away. Finch takes off Dewey's robotic eyes and fits his new robot Jeff with them. He powers the robot up and begins sending data to it. He is trying to get the robot to communicate, and after many failed attempts, Jeff nods and shows that it understands him. Finch is ecstatic at the robot's response. He plays with his dog and is glad that Goodyear soon might have a new friend. Jeff is then asked by Finch to explain something about itself, and the robot responds that it has 4 primary instructions. One of the instructions is never to harm people, and another one, the most important one, is that if Finch is gone, the robot must take care of Goodyear at any price. The electricity suddenly goes off. Finch sets off to fix a wind turbine. He fixes it and the lights come back on. From the top of the wind turbine, he sees a massive storm far away. Finch returns and sets up Jeff's connection to the weather station so he can issue a forecast. In the next 24 hours, 4 distinct storms will be heading their way, according to Jeff, and they won't be able to avoid them. Additionally, he predicts that the weather will endure for about 40 days. Finch decides that they must leave and thinks San Francisco will be their best bet. Finch assembles Jeff's entire body and teaches it to walk while uploading as much data to it as possible. After a little practice, Jeff is able to walk and Finch is pleased. Goodyear, however, dislikes Jeff and does not seem to trust it. As the storm approaches, Finch begins to gather the necessities and disconnects Jeff's data transfer, which is only at 72%. As a result, the robot behaves weirdly and undeveloped. Dewey is called upon by Finch, but since Dewey's eyes are gone, it crashes into things. Finch then connects a camera to Dewey so he can see. All 4 then board Finch's RV and begin traveling towards San Francisco. Jeff is incredibly curious and wants to learn everything that Finch does. The group successfully escapes before the storm hits. They then make a stop at a ghost town where Finch asks Jeff to meet him outside while donning the UV protective gear. He then starts educating Jeff in the fundamentals of scavenging and about the dangers for biological creatures to be in the sun. Later, the two of them enjoy a moment popping some popcorn just by exposing them to the sunlight. However, the enjoyment quickly ends as Finch realizes that a storm is heading their way. Everyone gets in the RV and the storm eventually catches up to them despite Finch's best efforts to outrun it. To not be blown away, Finch orders Jeff to assist him in tying the RV to the ground using wires. As Finch becomes fatigued, Jeff assumes control and completes the work. Then Finch enters the RV and locks it. As the full force of the storm hits them, all the wires start to snap one by one until there is only one left. Fortunately, the storm passes fast and they make it through. While Finch appreciates Jeff's effort with the wires, he is upset to discover that the car's front tire has been destroyed. Despite having a spare tire, they lack a jack to lift the RV. But Jeff suddenly just lifts the vehicle with his brute strength so that Finch can replace the tire. The following morning, we see Jeff trying to speak with Goodyear and claiming to be learning dog language. However, Finch explains to him that it will take some time for him and Goodyear to get along. Later, as they are continuing their trip, a road sign notes that it is 1,552 miles to San Francisco. When Jeff asks Finch to explain the concept of trust, Finch can't find the right words to explain it to him. Instead, he recounts a story in his own life, beginning with saying once upon a time. He talks about how he once was working on a project at his job, before the natural disaster, and managed to solve a software problem alone, yet he still gave the team credit. He was able to gain their trust that way. Finch's condition is constantly worsening during the journey. After making a halt at a restaurant, Finch starts to throw up blood. Understanding that his time is running out, Finch brings Goodyear into the restaurant and plays with him to enjoy the moment. Simultaneously, Jeff is playing around inside the RV, turning on music, and then sits down in the driver's seat to play and act like he is driving. Suddenly, he accidentally removes the brakes and the vehicle starts to roll, hitting a parked car. As Finch runs out to ask what happened, Jeff behaves like an innocent child. Finch asks Jeff to fetch his protective suit so that he can get to the car. But instead, Jeff starts the car and reverses it, crashing into the restaurant. Finch shows indignantly what happens to his skin when exposed to sunlight. Then he yells at Jeff, telling him that his only responsibility is to look after Goodyear. As they get going again, Finch makes the decision to teach Jeff how to drive. As usual, Jeff is clumsy at first, but he quickly picks up the skill and begins to drive with ease. While Finch is happy with this, the doggo is still dubious. Later on, they make a stop beside the road to camp and makes a small bonfire. Since there is no longer an ozone layer, Finch and the others can watch astonishing northern lights in the night sky. Jeff proposes that they should drive by night instead since it's safer and Finch doesn't have to use his suit. Finch responds to him by saying that it's too risky as people are lurking by night. The next morning, Finch is exhausted, shaking, and is throwing up more blood. Jeff inquires if there is something he can do to help, to which Finch answers with a joke telling him to call a doctor. Without any instructions, Jeff starts taking care of Finch and continues the journey while Finch is sleeping. All the time, Goodyear is lying close to Finch. As they get to a big city, Jeff wakes Dewey up and they go scavenging for supplies together. They walk into a hospital where Jeff discovers food, medication, and even a stylish jacket for himself, and he is thrilled. Dewey finds snacks and tries to reach it, but doesn't see that there is a bear trap ahead and is crushed to pieces. When Finch awakens, he finds that both robots have vanished. Despite being weak, he puts on his suit to go after Jeff and Dewey, knowing that something is not right. As he gets into the building, he is being watched by someone from the shadows. Finch first finds Dewey, who is destroyed. He apologizes and switches off Dewey's power. Eventually he locates Jeff after hearing a rumbling sound. He tells Jeff the place is unsafe and they start running back to the RV. They make it to the vehicle, but Finch's sickness causes him to pass out immediately and Jeff drives. We suddenly see a car starting up that begins following them. Finch wakes up that night and sees that the automobile is pursuing them. Thanks to Jeff's ability to see in the dark, they turn off the lights on the RV. Finch tells Jeff to step on the gas to get away from the mysterious car. Finch takes the wheel as they are heading into a storm, and steers them off the road down underneath an underpass to hide. The RV, however, is too high to get underneath and the solar panels on top of the vehicle are destroyed. The mysterious car passes above them and disappears. Finch runs outside when he realizes that the car is gone, only to check on the solar panels, which have been destroyed. He begins to blame himself, and says that it's over because he won't be able to fix it. Jeff reassures Finch that he can drive them all the way to San Francisco, but Finch starts to yell at him, telling him to stop talking. Angry, Finch goes back into the RV, leaving Jeff outside in the rain. Jeff soon enters the RV too, and lets Finch know that he believes in him and thinks they will make it to San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge. Finch begins telling a story from many months ago, when he was inside an old supermarket. He had found some food when suddenly a girl and her mother appeared. Soon after, a car showed up and a man with a gun stepped out and shot the mother and the daughter. As the man had gone, Finch heard a faint noise from the girl's bag. In it, Finch found a small little shivering puppy, Goodyear. From that moment on, Goodyear has been Finch's first priority. Next, we see Jeff driving as they pass another road sign saying San Francisco is 480 miles away. All of a sudden, a butterfly is splashed on the windshield and Jeff abruptly stops the vehicle. Finch wakes up to the sudden stop and sees the butterfly. They open the door and Finch puts out his hand, only to discover the sun is harmless. For the first time in many years, Finch goes out into the sun to feel its warmth. He cries out in joy when he spots a flower and another butterfly. They continue driving as we see flowers on the fields. Next, we see them all sitting in the sun having a picnic. Finch starts sharing another story of his life, when Jeff stops him and insists he begins the story with Once Upon a Time. Finch fulfills his wish and then tells about how he never knew his father, and expresses that he also would have wanted to live and travel more than he has, like having felt the wind on the Golden Gate Bridge. Jeff stands up and is almost jumping of excitement as he tells Finch that they are only 18.5 hours away from San Francisco, and can experience it if they leave now. But Finch interrupts Jeff and tells him that he's dying, and won't make it. Jeff is dispirited, and Finch asks him to promise to look after Goodyear when he is gone. Jeff promises, and right afterwards, Finch pulls out Goodyear's favorite ball to play fetch. He hands the ball to Jeff, telling him this is the key to start building trust with Goodyear. He rejoices as he sees Jeff and Goodyear playing. Suddenly, Finch coughs blood. His fancy suit gets blood on it, and Jeff helps him to his feet. While walking towards the RV, Jeff asks if there is anything he can do. In reply, Finch tells Jeff he has already done everything he could ever wish, shakes Jeff's hand, whereafter Jeff gives Finch a hug. Jeff helps Finch into the RV, and then goes back out to gather all their stuff. In the evening, we see Jeff sitting outside as Finch rests with Goodyear in the RV. Goodyear starts to howl inside and Jeff behaves saddened as he hears the sound. Finch has passed away. In the early morning, Jeff burns Finch's body on a pyre in the open landscape as Goodyear sits close by and watches. They both grieve over their loss. Jeff at first doesn't know what to do, but figures that he should carry on with Finch's routine, so he feeds the dog. Before leaving the burial ground, they play fetch once more. Jeff and Goodyear seem to begin getting along, and Goodyear shows that he trusts Jeff more and more. They continue their journey, and every now and then they stop to play fetch. As they get closer to San Francisco, more and more plants are seen beside the road. Once they arrive at the magnificent Golden Gate Bridge, Finch makes a memorial for Finch. They walk out on the bridge and discover that a lot of people have traveled there, having left notes informing their loved ones of their whereabouts. Jeff uses a postcard of the Golden Gate Bridge and makes a drawing of himself, Goodyear, and Finch, standing on it together. In the last scene, the two of them are seen walking on the bridge back to the RV to continue journeying, all while Jeff begins telling Goodyear a story, starting by saying Once Upon a Time. The end. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this and hit the like button to help us out. Until next time, take care.